Hello and welcome back, and that is right, we're returning to the subject of setting up your Terramaster NAS right the very first time, and today we are looking at Plex Media Server. A number of you almost certainly have bought a Plex Media Server NAS in the form of a Terramaster. Why did you do it? Well, it's so damn affordable, but for some of you, installing Plex the very right way first time and getting everything right and not having to roll anything back can be problematic. We've discussed the subject of Plex here on the channel for a very long time. We've gone through different test scenarios with Terramaster NAS systems. We've even done lots of guides talking about the do's and don'ts and the mistakes people make. And around about almost coming up on 2 years ago now, even though it says 1 year, you can see May 2022 there, we actually did a setup guide here. But as you can see, this video was a mere 12 minutes long. It covered the installation and that was about it. So for 2024 moving forward, what I wanted to do is really get into the weeds and help you set this up right the first time, because a number of the new systems like the 464 Pro and stuff like that are pretty powerful systems. So let's get to grips with this, shall we? So the first thing we want to do is, of course, install Plex. But before we even go there, you need to make sure your media is on the system. So real quick, just remember that you need to know where the media is on your NAS. So in my case, I've created a folder here called Multimedia, and from there I've installed all of the media that I intend to use for my Plex Media Server. So just make sure that you either create a new folder by clicking the plus symbol, and it has to be a shared folder, by the way. So create a new shared folder, give it a name, so click that plus symbol, call it Plex Media, for example. Ensure that it's on the right area of storage on your NAS. Might need to have no spaces. Click next. Don't bother with encryption. You can leave a recycle bin if you want. Next, set if you want it to have any permissions. You don't want any permissions above and beyond user, because again, we don't want to give this account too much access. Click next. Then suggest which users can access it, and we'll get onto the fact I've got a Plex user in just a moment, but select which user has access to it. Then from there, don't worry about any storage quotas, and from there you can create that account, folder, and once you've created the folder that you want, you can either dump media into it by clicking the upload option there, or you can literally drag and drop media directly into this folder if you choose, by dragging and dropping it in there. It's that straightforward to add Plex Media Server media. But the other thing you should do, and again this is more housekeeping than anything, is to do with that user option, because setting up Plex on the Terramaster NAS is only half the battle. You want to make sure that the device, your phone, your tablet, your smart TV, your whatever, and your friends and your family's TVs and remote controls and their own telephones and whatever that are accessing your Plex do not have too much power. Giving an account too much power and sharing those credentials with another device means you are opening up attack vectors. That means that although I could allow my phone to access Plex, if I give the account to this that has access to too many folders and too much power on the Terramaster, a vulnerability on my phone software could impact my Plex Media Server or my whole NAS. So some users choose to create a special individual account for different services, in this case Plex. Go ahead and in the control panel, so if we come out there, go into Control Panel, select User, select the plus symbol, create a user. From there, give them a password if you choose. You don't have to, but it's recommended that you do. Once you've given them a password, go ahead and click Next. From there, no storage limit. From there, say which storage they can access. So if when you've created that folder that your media is in, make sure they have access to it, but more importantly, not access to anything else. And once they've done that and you've given them read-write access to that individual folder, and again we'll get onto the subject of read and write in just a moment, once you've done that and said what they have access to and not to, the reason you're doing this is because, for example, so let's say for my multimedia, I gave this folder, this Plex user, read-only access. That means that this user that we combined with Plex can only read the data. It can watch the movies, it can see the photos, it can listen to the music. That sounds fine, right? But as good as that sounds, you're going to need occasionally that user account to be able to access more data. It's going to need to be able to write data. Sometimes when it's the scraping of metadata, the transcoding in advance of files and creating local copies, creating individual data, log data, playlist data, and more. The result is some of that data that Plex is going to create has to live inside the same directory as the data. I hate seagulls. So for that use, it's often recommended to make sure that this user will have read and write access to all of these directories. Doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but it is recommended. After that, you can create this user and you're good to go. And that means that not only have we now got a user that's dedicated for just Plex, that doesn't have too much power to do anything else in the system, but also they can only access that one folder and they can't cause any damage anywhere else on the system if their client devices are infiltrated or a vulnerability exploited. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of Plex's own installation there. Head into the App Center. From the App Center, go to All, go quite close to the bottom, and you will find Plex Media Server. From there, click Install. It will now install Plex Media Server. But another little note here, a little nugget to pop on the side. As you may see here at the bottom, we are running version 1.32.87639. Now, let's say, for example, that Plex, they're the ones reducing the apps. What have they got on their side? If you go to the Plex website, plex.tv, select here at the top, Plex Media Server Downloads. From there, go to the drop-down, and then select Terramaster, or more precisely, TOS5, the newer version. Then, select there. What you'll find is version 1.40.07988. That is actually newer than the version on their App Center. How is that? Well, nice and simple. The reason that you may have version differences is because when Plex updates and adds security improvements to their platform and allows them available to download, they then submit, or Terramaster request, the latest version of their software, and then it needs to be verified and tested. This takes time. Consequently, you will find inconsistencies between the version that you can download and install from within your Terramaster system, or going directly to Terramaster and downloading the app. And later on, once you've got Terramaster and the Plex Media Server up and running, when there are firmware updates to Plex, you will need to head into this section here and download the latest version. But we'll come back to that later on. Carrying on, now we've set this application up, go ahead and click Open. A new tab will open up here on screen, and you'll be invited to log in to your Plex Media Server account. And once you log into that Plex Media Server account, which I've already done, it will bind the Plex Media Server you're running with your Plex account all together. And then you'll see this screen. If this screen doesn't appear, just refresh this page. Click Got It. And then from there, give your server a name. I'm going to call it the original TNAS name and the word Plex. As you can see, it's also allowing you to have configurable access outside of the LAN. What this means is to access the control panel of Plex, if you want to do that from outside of the local area network, you have to ensure you put a tick in this box. But bear in mind, you are now adding server configuration options externally accessible, which is a lot of control to give to users if they are going to use these credentials. But don't worry, later on I'll show you how to create friends and family users to make this a lot safer. Click Next, and from there you will then have to wait for it to establish those credentials for system level secure access, and then it will allow you to start adding each of the directories for the multimedia that is on your Terramaster NAS system that we granted permissions to earlier. Once they're done, go ahead and start adding your first library. Select Films, select Add Folder, select Browse for Media Folder. From there, you'll find your main volume, if you have multiple volumes, to see them listed there, and find the folder that you know your media is in. In my case, there's my movies. Select Add, then select Advanced. Leave this at Plex Movie, but depending on whether your multimedia is quite new or custom made, you may want to change the agent. This is where media metadata scraping, which is thumbnail art, which is descriptions, casting, reviews and more, is kept and maintained and crawled from online completely for free. You do not need a Plex pass in order to do that. It is 100% free. Select, in most cases, Plex Movie, but with, again, more niche collections, it's recommended to go for the movie database, but more on that later with TV shows. All the options underneath are more about presentation, adding trailers, pre-roll, post-roll trailers, adding age limitations or including or disallowing adult content, as well as which sources you want for reviews online, and more presentation that is going to be more applicable to you when you're trying to turn your big pile of folders into your own private Netflix. From there, click Add. Now, you can add everything. If you want to add music, for example, if adding music, you can crawl metadata online to get album art. You can even synchronize it and crawl from your own iTunes libraries if you choose. And again, there are different directories to get more background information, including lyrics, recommendations for other music, critical reviews, and more. And when it comes to TV shows, you can go ahead, find your TV shows just like I'm doing here. But this time, it's a recommendation I often make that when it comes to TV shows, do still use the Plex TV scanner, but change this to the TVDB. I find that as a much better and more effective metadata database for TV shows. And again, there's lots of presentation information there that you can use to change how everything's displayed to you. Finally, if you've got other stuff such as home movies or custom stuff, such as 8K trailers, which I use for my testing here on the channel, they can go in their own bespoke folder there that's really kind of more of a deposit directory with a little thumbnail generation, and that's really about it. When you're ready and you've added all of the folders and directories you want, click Next. From there, you'll be invited to download client tools. Remember, the server is the server end. It is the main, it is the host. Clients are mobile phones, they are TVs, they are consoles, they are the thing you're watching the media on. So you can either go ahead and download them on your local app center for Android, iOS, Samsung TVs and more, or download them here so you can send them directly to your devices and install them. Bear in mind that if you are someone who doesn't want to use a Plex pass and therefore wants to use Plex completely for free, one of the features you're not going to be able to access without paying for it is the mobile apps, which will either only play 1 minute of footage and then stop, watermark photos, or charge you up to £5 to install the app. Having a Plex pass allows you unlimited, unfettered access to those mobile apps. Once you've clicked Done, it will now present the Plex Media Server screen. Remember, this is Plex Media Server, the configuration tool. From there, scroll to the bottom, select More, and find your Plex Media Server. I've got several, but you might too, for reasons I'll show you later on. For now, select the Terramaster NAS, and there is our media, and there is all that lovely scraped metadata. Actors, descriptions, reviews, soundtracks, everything, all available at our fingertips. Now, you may think that's the end of the road here, but it really isn't. There's lots of quality of life things that you should do very early doors on your Plex Media Server before going any further. So let's go through them. First up, I mentioned it earlier on, updates. It's worth remembering that Plex has numerous security updates and feature updates throughout the course of its lifespan, whether you are a Plex pass holder or not. And as you can see at the top right, you'll see this orange arrow. And although I've got multiple servers, if we go to the bottom, we can see down here that alongside all of the metadata being scraped, a server update is indeed available for me here. Now, if I click that option, it will take me to a download page. That download allowing me to download that latest version we talked about earlier to my local PC. And then to update Plex, I need to go back into TOS, head into the settings menu. From the settings menu, select Install Application Manually. I still hate seagulls. And from there, find the file you downloaded and then install it manually. Doing so will not reset any of the choices you've made with shared folders, users, or anything on Plex Media Server. It will just update you to the latest version, and Plex will need to restart in order to get that job done. Next up, if you find that some metadata isn't being crawled, one of the best ways to handle that is to go back into the Plex user interface here, highlight the directory that you want to resequence, and then from there, select Manage Library and either refresh all metadata to recheck online, or select Edit to select under New Folders and Advanced, go in and select a new agent to crawl online. So again, we can go ahead and select, for example, the Plex database there, and it will start rechecking for new metadata. If it's something specific in just one item, you can go ahead and click more there, and from there you can then analyze and re-optimize for more media choices here. But sometimes you're going to be adding media, taking media away, refreshing and redistributing media throughout your system. And when that happens, whether it is that you're directly adding new data to your Terramaster NAS or directly within Plex, you're going to want to know that the system is keeping up. So one of the ways in which you can do that, click these three dots here. From the three dots, you want to go ahead, dig down deeper into Manage Server and then select Settings. From here on the left hand side, go down to the Library option, and from here where it says Scan My Library Automatically, put a tick in that box, scroll to the bottom, and then from there make sure to save changes. The reason being that if data is amended to the directories that are connected to Plex Media Server, it will automatically rescan and try to refresh that metadata or introduce new scraped metadata. And there's lots of configuration options you can use for scanning your libraries periodically and more, all accessible here from that list. Alternatively, if you want this to be even more semi-autonomous, you can go down to the bottom to the scheduled tasks, and from here you can actually get it to do fundamental system-wide rechecks, rescans and changes without the need of the system giving it a poke, with a schedule that will not only remove old, dead, unused metadata from TV shows you may have removed, or if you've refreshed and there's improved metadata out there, it'll actually get rid of the old on rotation, and you can set that schedule very, very easily. Next up, let's talk about transcoding and conversions, as a number of you have almost certainly given a lot of a shiz about this before buying a Terramaster. On the left hand side of the screen of those server pages, select Transcoder. From here, there'll be an option at the top that says Select Transcoder Quality. Now, if it's not there, make sure to select the Advanced option on the top right. Now, real brief, what is transcoding, what is conversions, and should you care? Well, conversions and transcoding at their basic level are when you take, in this context, a large media file, be it audio or visual, and reshape it to something better suited to the destination client. In this case, let's say a mobile phone. This mobile phone is useful, it's convenient, I can take it on the go. But if I own an 8K versions of Avengers Endgame, I don't really want to use public Wi-Fi on my mobile phone to watch an 8K file. It's too big. Also, it's going to be massive. It's going to overheat my file, it's going to use up the battery almost, and it's just too darn big. I want that file reshaped. I want the resolution reduced. I want the compression technique changed. I want the size of the file to be demonstrably reduced. That's what conversion and transcoding is capable of. Now, it's more than that. You can change file formats, you can change audio formats, but at its base level, it is about changing a big file or an awkward file or an incompatible file into something better suited to the destination. Now, where does transcoding and this little option here come into bear? Well, the reason is, when you buy a NAS, such as this NAS here, the F4-424 Pro, this has a CPU on board. This is an N300 CPU, an 8-core CPU with integrated graphics. Now, integrated graphics are a small portion of the whole CPU dedicated to graphical use. So be that for video playback, games playing, or whatever. Now, if you didn't have that little element on board, that dedicated tool, what would happen is, if you needed the file to be reshaped, the CPU, if it doesn't have, or at least have access to, an element of graphical manipulation, a graphics card or integrated graphics, it will have to use raw CPU power to get the job done, which is nowhere near as efficient as a graphical engine. That's why you could have an insanely powerful computer that, if it doesn't have a decent graphics card, would struggle to run the latest games, or at least run them very well at all. You need specialised tools for the job. You can use any knife to spread butter on a piece of bread, but have you ever tried using a meat cleaver to spread butter? Specialised tools are all too often smaller but a lot more capable, and also require less power to get the job done. Welcome to the world of Robert's butter analogy. But when it comes to transcoding engines, in Plex Pass, you need a Plex Pass to do something called hardware transcoding. Hardware transcoding is when you use that bit of graphical power there. What that means is, even if your CPU has the integrated graphics, even if it has that embedded element for manipulating graphics and using less power, it might not be able to use it in Plex unless you have a Plex pass and set this option to make my CPU hurt. That is what allows files to be changed more effectively, and that is why we regularly test all of these different NASs to show just how good or bad they run a lot of those services. We've been doing it for many, many years. Now, make sure to select Make My CPU Hurt, but also scroll to the bottom, and if your CPU has more than one graphical engine, say for example it has a graphics card and a CPU with integrated graphics, make sure to select the correct one to ensure that it utilizes the area of graphical manipulation and power on your system that you need it to. Make sure you tick that option, as well as using hardware accelerated transcoding. Once you've selected all the appropriate options, be sure to go to the bottom and click Save. Another little tip that a lot of users aren't aware of is accessing the media on Plex without Plex. That's right, having all the media on your Terramaster NAS using Plex Media Server and crawling and have all that metadata is great. But what if you're using an old mobile phone that doesn't support Plex anymore? What if you're using an old TV that supports media servers, can search a local area network, but it doesn't allow you to install apps? For those devices, you can still be reliant on DLNA or UPnP, Digital Living Network Alliance devices, or Universal Plug and Play. These allow you to see storage devices on a basic breadcrumb file folder level. Indeed, we talked about it before when we were talking about the media server application from Terramaster, but you can actually use Plex and its database in that way too. Head into the DLNA option on the left, then on the top, select Enable the DLNA server, and again, don't forget to click Save Changes. What this does now, if we go into my computer here, is allow us to connect to that NAS using non-Plex software and pick up the NAS. And there we go, there's our Plex media server right there, the TNAS. And we can go ahead, select it, click Next, and while it does that in the background, it will then add that Plex NAS to my range of available media server Plex NASs. We can then browse it just like we would any other DLNA media server. As you can see, we can go in, we can access video, we can go into films, we can go by folder, and there is all of our media there for us to access. We don't need to necessarily use Plex if we don't want to, and also we can run both simultaneously. And talking of running things simultaneously, how about us talking about our network? Because once we've got this device set up and it's being accessed by us, our family, our kids, our partners, our old relatives, our friends, our work colleagues, all of that, that's a lot of connections at once. And what if our Terramaster NAS, which, is this lovely little 8-core 32GB DDR5, has got a lot going on? What if the last thing you want to do is oversaturate your network? Well, one of the things you can do with the majority of NASs that have multiple Ethernet ports, such as the F4-424, is you can bind Plex to a single port. Now, what do I mean by that? As you can see here, at the moment it says any, but I can actually physically select a specific physical port if I want. Now, why would I do that? Well, what that means is, if I have got a switch with multiple Ethernet ports, or a switch with loads of them, what I can do then is I can go ahead and connect multiple connections from the back of the Terramaster into our router or switch. Then I can say this port here is only for Plex. It's only for Plex. So everyone can share this lane, and that leaves this lane for my backups, for my surveillance, for my virtual machines, for my containers, for everything else. You can make sure that Plex doesn't overspill into another lane, or they overspill into it. And that means, unlike backups, which I've mentioned in other videos, can be differential or could be incremental, which means they can actually be broken down into small little packets and interrupted relatively easily with consistency checks. When it comes to multimedia, if you're watching Avengers at 8K and you're watching it, if that file is interrupted due to bandwidth and network oversaturation or overfilling, it'll just stop. You'll just get whatever you've buffered and it will stop. It will pixelate, it will freeze, it will end, which is really annoying. So dedicating Plex to a specific Port, if you've got the available ports on your router and or switch, is a really good idea as it allows you to differentiate and prioritize different lanes for different transmission of data. Now, what about when you do give access to your Plex media server to lots of other users? How do you do it, and how do you stop them taking the WAS? How do you clip their wings or completely remove them if you need to? Well, head into the Manage Library Access option on the left-hand side of the server settings menu, and from here select Grant Library Access. If someone has an associated account with Plex, you can get them to add their Plex username or their email address, and they'll either get a ping on their own existing Plex account to say this person wants to grant you access, or with their email address they'll be offered a chance to sign up to Plex for free and have access to your server. Again, bear in mind, if you're not using PlexPass, if they're using mobile apps, they may have to pay for those individual apps, but if you've got a PlexPass, they won't need to. Now, once that's done and they can access it, lovely stuff, and you can monitor them all on this page, and if you wish you can remove them if you wish and change their levels of access. But what if that user, great friend, great family member, suddenly installs access to your Plex on their TV, their friend's TV, their best mate's TV, their best friend's roommate TV, and just winds you up? How do you clip their wings rather than completely remove them? Well, go to the Authorized Devices tab. From here, this shows every single client and server host device associated and utilizing at one time or another this Plex Media Server account. And you can choose to just go down, find a machine that connected to your system, scroll down and go, nice try Gonzo, goodbye, and then remove them. It's that straightforward, and that's how you can monitor who and when has access to your system, as well as going into the dashboard, which will show you bandwidth, what's playing, CPU utilization and more, as well as listing which users are accessing your system if multiple different users are accessing it, and the number and frequency of those use case scenarios. But there you go, that is setting up Plex Media Server right the very first time on your Terramaster NAS. I hope you've enjoyed this. This isn't the last part in this guide series, and I hope you found it useful. Remember, if you need further support, head over to NAScompares, where not only is there the free advice section to get free assistance from us, more on that in a moment, but you can go utilize the NAS Builder. The NAS Builder will allow you to spec up the right Plex Media Server for your needs. Example, let's say you want 8 terabytes of storage on a 2-bay NAS, you want 1 disk of drive failure protection, and you want to spend $500. Then you want to say, I want to utilize it for Plex. I also want to back up my folders. Do you know what? I'd like to stream local multimedia. And do you know what? Why not? I want to store my photos as well. And there's lots of other options. I want to support up to at least 5 users. And you can even assign the network connection speed you want. Select NAS, and then from here it will tell you from Asustor, QNAP, Synology and Terramaster the best NAS for your needs. It even tells you to what level you can stream that media. Not only can you use these buy buttons here on the right to access shops like Amazon, eBay, AliExpress and more, of which if you were going to shop there anyway, why not? It results in a fee to me and Eddie and allows us to keep doing what we do. It's just us at NAScompares. But on top of that, if you're still on the fence, go ahead, select each of these NASs via the tick boxes on the left, and then from there select the compare button. That opens a brand new compare page that tells you the capabilities of each of these systems and what's good and what's bad and the best and the worst of all of them. It is a fantastic tool to tell you the best NAS for your needs in terms of Plex, of course, and otherwise. But if that's still not enough for you, on the free advice section, not only do we have a Discord, you can access recommended first and third party community support, as well as recommended subreddits, or use that free advice section providing 3 to 5 working days free advice, or you can use our expedited support section if you like. Alternatively, there's our Ask.NAScompares forum, or over on Ko-Fi and Patreon, you can go ahead via our membership tier for regular expedited support, our monthly Zooms, early access to content and content polls, or head over to the services tab where you can go ahead and arrange a 1-hour Zoom consultation with me and Eddie if you like. And of course, head over to the rest of our library of videos to find out about other videos on Plex, not just for Terramaster, but other brands as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.